If you are looking for a shortcut to being deeply informed on the world's most critical economic decisions, you are in the right place.
You know, it's so easy to dismiss the G20 as just a bunch of global elites in a room,
Right.
a photo op.
Exactly. But the decisions they make, or maybe more importantly, fail to make, they directly shape your financial reality.
We're talking about things that really hit home. The price of groceries, job security, even the rules for the internet.
Precisely. And today we're talking about the world's ultimate financial engine room.
It's a group that represents some truly staggering numbers.
They do. I mean, think about this. G20 members control 85% of all global wealth.
85%.
And they're home to 2/3 of the world's population. You can think of them as the primary engines on the global airplane. If those engines seize up, we are all in for an incredibly turbulent ride.
And our mission today, based on a deep review of diplomatic sources and press coverage, is to detail this unprecedented diplomatic, divorce between the 2025 host, South Africa, and the nation next in line, the USA. We're going to get into the U.S. boycott, the bitter clashes that followed, and what this whole rivalry really tells us about the future of global cooperation itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the fight, let's just define the arena. What exactly is the G20?
Well, its origin story is really rooted in crisis. The G20 was born in 1999.
Right.
It was created as an emergency response after these huge financial crises, like the Asian financial crisis, showed that instability in one country could spread globally and fast.
So the big powers realized they needed a kind of global neighborhood watch for the economy.
That's a great way to put it. And the key thing was its members. It wasn't just another meeting of the G7,
Right.
the traditional wealthy countries.
No, it brought in the big emerging players.
That's right. That's what changed the game. Suddenly you have India, Brazil, Mexico, and of course South Africa at the table. It was a recognition that you just couldn't stabilize the world economy without them.
And it's a marathon, right? Not just a one-day sprint where leaders shake hands for the cameras. How does the work actually get done?
It's a really structured two-track process that runs all year. First, you've got the finance track.
The accountants.
The global accountants, yes. Treasury secretaries, finance ministers, their focus is super technical, global debt, international tax policy, bank rules, the hard economics.
And then there's the other side, the Sherpa track.
Yes. And they're named after those expert mountain guides for a reason. The Sherpas are the personal diplomatic reps for the world leaders.
So they're doing the heavy lifting.
They are doing all the heavy lifting. They spend 12 months in these deep negotiations, hammering out the language of the final declarations.
So the actual summit with the presidents and prime ministers, that's almost just for show, the final sign-off.
Absolutely. The summit is the high-profile wedding day, but the Sherpas, they're the wedding planners who spend all year arguing over the fine print. If they haven't agreed, the summit is a failure before it even begins.
Which brings us to its unique structure. This no-rules club doesn't really have any power to enforce things.
It's a strange beast. It has no binding legal power, no headquarters, no permanent staff. It runs entirely on a kind of gentleman's agreement.
And because of that, consensus is sacred.
King. Everything has to be agreed upon by all 20 members.
Which raises the big question. In a group with countries that have totally opposite views on, well, everything, how do you get anything done?
Yeah.
It means one country can basically veto the entire process.
And that's its core vulnerability. It's also why the rotating presidency is so powerful. The host country sets the theme. They drive the entire agenda for the year.
So the host decides if the dinner party conversation is about politics or the environment.
Exactly. And South Africa, as the 2025 host, made a very deliberate choice with their theme: solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
They wanted to talk about inequality, climate justice, debt relief.
They were determined to pivot the focus to issues vital for the global South.
And here's where the diplomatic bomb was dropped in Johannesburg. This theme.
Yeah.
It led to the U.S. administration under President Trump boycotting the entire summit.
An outright boycott. This isn't just not showing up. It's a deliberate political act.
And the reason they gave was aggressive.
Very. President Trump accused South Africa of implementing anti-white policies and persecuting its Afrikaner minority. Now, these were claims the South African government just vehemently rejected as misinformation.
So this wasn't just a simple disagreement. This was a fundamental clash over what the G20 should even be.
Absolutely. The U.S. administration openly criticized South Africa's focus. They called it an ideological preoccupation with social justice and green energy.
In other words, they were saying, Let's get back to real economics.
That was the message. Trade balances, currency, deregulation. When South Africa insisted on pushing climate justice, the U.S. just walked away.
It's like the biggest homeowner in the neighborhood association refusing to show up because they don't like the chairperson. It just paralyzes everything.
And that paralysis was followed by pure diplomatic drama. The gavel snub.
Right, the handover ceremony. This is normally a high point, a symbol of cooperation. What happened?
Well, because President Trump boycotted, the U.S. sent a charge d'affaires to accept the ceremonial gavel.
For those who don't follow this stuff, that's not a good look.
It's the lowest level diplomatic official you can send. It's an intentional sign of disrespect. It's like sending an intern to accept an Oscar.
So how did President Ramaphosa of South Africa respond to that?
He flatly refused the public handover. He said it was an insult to the office of the presidency, a critical counter-snub.
So no grand ceremony. How did the handover actually happen?
It was done completely behind closed doors, late at night, at a government office in Pretoria. It was the diplomatic equivalent of just leaving the keys under the doormat for the Americans.
Oh. And the war of words didn't stop there. The U.S. reaction was pretty harsh.
It was unprecedented. When President Ramaphosa suggested the U.S. might still engage in some way, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, just shut him down. She called his comments fake news and accused him of running his mouth.
That is not normal diplomatic language.
Not at all. That's for political rivals, not a head of state.
And then South Africa issued a joint declaration with the other 19 members anyway.
They did. They argued they had enough consensus to move forward. The U.S. response was basically, no, you don't. Their argument was that without them, there can be no consensus.
They completely rejected it.
A White House spokesperson, Anna Kelly, accused South Africa of weaponizing their G20 presidency to push their own agenda.
Okay, so let's be impartial here.
Yeah.
Let's try to understand the U.S. justification for this.
Well, their public reasoning rested on two pillars. The first was a moral one. President Trump argued attending would be like sanctioning the human rights abuses he claimed were happening. But the deeper critique was about mission creep.
Mission creep. What does that mean in this context?
The U.S. argued the G20 had expanded way beyond its original job.
Which was financial stability.
Right. They felt it had become the G100, this forum trying to solve every global problem from diversity quotas to climate change, and that diluted its focus on the hard-hitting economic issues.
So their boycott was a message. The G20 is broken if the world's largest economy isn't there, and the only way to fix it is to drag it back to its economic roots.
Precisely. Which brings us to the USA's 2026 presidency. They took over December 1st, 2025, and the White House immediately framed their turn as a rescue mission.
A rescue mission? What kind of language did they use?
They said they looked forward to restoring legitimacy to the G20.
A clear shot at South Africa.
A very clear implication that the group had become illegitimate. They explicitly said their goal is to right-size the G20 and turn it back into a CEO's meeting.
That is a complete 180 from the 2025 agenda. What are the U.S. pillars for 2026?
They've laid out three. The first is deregulation, cutting red tape globally. The goal is to make it easier for businesses to invest across borders, even if it means tearing up some environmental or labor rules.
Which will immediately create tension with, say, the EU. What's the second pillar?
Energy security. This is a direct rejection of the 2025 climate focus. The U.S. agenda is all about affordable, traditional energy, oil, gas, nuclear, and moving away from what they see as restrictive green energy mandates.
And the final one?
Innovation. A big focus on AI, advanced manufacturing, new tech. They want the G20 to set rules that encourage rapid development, not stifle it with a regulation. It's a very business-centric agenda.
But maybe the most dramatic signal came from the guest list, who they plan to invite and not invite.
Indeed. The U.S. announced it would invite Poland to the 2026 summit.
Arguing that its economy is now big enough to deserve a spot.
Right. But that wasn't the bombshell. President Trump then posted on social media that South Africa would not be invited to the Miami summit.
Citing disinformation about white genocide.
Exactly.
This is more than just a snub. This challenges the entire structure of the G20. If a host can just exclude the previous host, the whole thing loses its meaning as a stable forum.
That's the critical takeaway. It raises the question, is the G20 still a global group for the world's most important economies? Or is it becoming a club of friends based on who the current host likes?
So what does this all mean for you listening? This isn't just a personality clash. This is a battle for the soul of global governance, the great G20 divide.
We are seeing two completely different visions fighting for dominance. On one side, South Africa's vision, the global voice. It's about multilateralism, using the G20 for the global south, emphasizing climate justice. Their stand is the world moves forward even if the biggest player walks away.
And then you have the USA's vision,
Hmm.
the economic engine. It's America first, deregulation and economic growth, pulling back from social issues. Their stand is that they'll just rebuild the G20 with partners who share their business-driven values.
And the core question after all this is still the same. Is the G20 a club where everyone has an equal vote? Or is it a club where the biggest member, the US, effectively has a veto on whether the meeting even counts?
And that's precisely why you need to pay attention. These decisions, whether it's on debt or energy, create ripples that eventually hit your local bank's balance sheet and the prices at the supermarket.
As the G20 moves from the ideological battlegrounds of Johannesburg to the pro-business agenda of Miami, we are seeing a fundamental shift in what global cooperation actually means.
So the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. Will the G20 go back to being a highly effective, if narrow, financial watchdog? Or has this boycott shattered its cohesion for good, turning it into a political tool used only to enforce the ideology of whoever is hosting that year?
That's the food for thought as the world watches Miami. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.